And today on the show, I'm glad to welcome back Baber Farooq. Baber is the Senior Vice President of Market Strategy and Procurement Solutions at SAP. And there's few people in the procurement industry that have such an inside view of the advancement of procurement technology. That's why I wanted to invite Baber on the show to talk about the rapid pace of ProcureTech evolution, both at the platform and the suite level. And kind of the context for this that really kind of drove my interest was an announcement last week at DPW that Baber, you and the team at SAP made around kind of how you were evolving Ariba. And Ariba, such ubiquitous product in the procurement tech space, so important for us as an industry. So I thought, let's have a chat about that. Let's talk a little bit about where we're kind of going from an evolution of procurement technology perspective. So with that all said, Baber, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Phil. We always love being on the show.
Yeah, so I kind of teed it up there in the introduction, but you made an announcement last week at DPW around the future of SAP Ariba. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We made the announcement at Spend Connect, at SAP Connect in Las Vegas. We made the announcement at DPW. It's been something we've been working on for the past 12 to 18 months. And it's effectively, we have reimagined SAP Ariba. So we're calling it an SAP Ariba. And the basic premise of it is, if we were redesigning a procurement platform for the world in which generative artificial intelligence is a reality, how would that product work?
Yeah.
How would that experience be? That experience would certainly be different than the ones that we're used to now and the ones evolved into. The premise of it is that this is a transformative technology. I think everyone generally agrees with that.
Yeah.
You know, how the technology is going to take shape is where people end up disagreeing, but it's transformative enough for us to be able to say, okay, well, the experience should be very different than the way we've been looking at experiences thus far.
Yeah.
You know, and it's sort of, one could say that it's an evolution of user experience itself, right? The way the user should interact with the system ultimately is dependent on how any AI technology is going to be effectively infused in the procurement process. But it was transformative enough for us to say, okay, let's rebuild it from the ground up to some extent, right? And this is really the first time we've made such a significant platform decision, you know, since the inception of the company, inception of Ariba, I should say, the product, right? These are not easy decisions to make from a technology perspective, but when we had already been working on next gen platforms when we had introduced some of our newer products like category management. And what we realized clearly is that, you know, the ability to develop on a modern platform for modern technology like generative artificial intelligence was much more powerful, much more stronger. And therefore we said, okay, well, let's infuse the same platform mindset across the entire suite and not just have it restricted to the latest innovation. So that's sort of the approach we've had and the way we're looking.
So when you were kind of making that decision, what did you look and say, you know what, I think that the output of just trying to build generative AI into an existing platform has limitations that don't kind of allow you to fulfill the vision, whereby it necessitated kind of a brand new platform build?
The speed of development was one major factor, right? Around it. I think when you are trying to build on classic technology and legacy technology, which is what's present right now, you know, in the tech landscape, the speed of development is slower. It's more prone to bugginess, if you will, right? And it sort of became a little bit of a hodgepodge of things that, oh, you already do this, and then you were just going to like put this AI bit on top of it, right? So it was clunky. Is the best way to, I think, say it, right? And I think that's one of the things we talk about when we talk about AI. Like, it's a remarkably transformative technology.
Yeah.
The adoption is still very low. Right, industry-wise, right? Well, why is that? And I think the reason that is the case is because, you know, it is being designed as a bit of an afterthought. It's a cool thing that's designed as an afterthought, right?
Yeah, or an add-on.
Or an add-on, exactly right. Rather than if you say, okay, well, let's imagine if the walk-up experience by default was an AI experience, right? Something that, remarkably, enabled this productivity shift where things are already happening in the product and it's already driving actions and it's just asking you for verification and the human in the loop is making sure that it is doing and what it should be doing. But it isn't sort of like, okay, now that I'm doing this, I want to go click this button and go talk to AI and try the outcome. So that I think was the difference in terms of how what made us realize that we should look at it differently.
How much should kind of what's your philosophy on how much should a user of technology and of course in this case procurement technology actually know that generative AI is being used, as they're using the product? Should it be almost invisible to them, the how? They don't care about the how, they just care about the output.
Ultimately, what matters most is the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I cracked this tongue-in-cheek joke when I was announcing this at the events, which was, everyone keeps talking about AI, but they talk about AI just for the sake of AI, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately, the only thing that matters is the outcome you can achieve. What is that outcome? That outcome is resilience, cost savings, speed, productivity, like how fast you're getting things done. That's ultimately what matters. I do think at present, there is definitely a need to make sure that the user is informed that the output is being generated by AI.
Mm-hmm.
Our sort of philosophy initially, like there's this debate where, should every time AI is being invoked, should the system ask you to invoke it or should it just do it and then let you know that I've done it, now check it, right?
Yeah.
And we've gone like back and forth on that from a design element perspective. And right now, I think there's a lot of features that we're building with the mindset that, okay, let's reduce the clicks from user experience. Do this. Let's just make it do the work, right? We have enough confidence in the algorithms to make it do the work, let you know that I've done it, right? And then you can go ahead and verify the output and make any changes that need to, right? That is a different approach where if it's entirely either chatbot based or whether it's based on, before every little output you say, generate, right? That becomes a difficult user experience as well, because you're sort of, sure, you're not necessarily doing the work, but you're sort of kind of mindlessly trying to find in the application, where do I click generate next? And it's not pleasant from a UX perspective, right? So I think we're falling on the perspective, where we're landing is that the AI capabilities should be invoked automatically when you've entered a process. So when you've entered a process and you want to run a sourcing event, you've made that decision, right? You want to modify your category strategy, you've made that decision. You're searching for an item to buy. You're making some sort of decision that I want to buy something. So you've started that process. That's been invoked by the end user. The AI should then sort of jump in, end up doing the work, and then say, hey, I've done this. Now please go ahead and check, modify, alter, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right. And also the other thing is, what's built into the capabilities is the ability to constantly give feedback, right?
Yeah.
Did I do a
Train
good
the
job?
model.
Yeah. Was I completely off here,
Yeah.
or did I do a good job? Am I on the right track? Right. Because that obviously, makes it a better and more system.
How did you kind of approach data quality? It's kind of the age-old problem. I know, so certainly as long as I've been in procurement, it's one that I feel like we haven't necessarily fixed for. And that kind of then ties into the trust, because the trust of the outputs is in a lot of cases based on the quality of the data that goes into the inputs, as opposed to just the technology on its own kind of helping you through a process faster. Kind of what thought did you give into, how do we ensure that there's trust in the outputs, because the tool, supports whether it's cleansing, data, classification of data, or all the things that lead into good outputs when you think about it from a data perspective.
Really good question. So, I mean, we're extremely fortunate at SAP, extremely fortunate to have sort of the largest data set of enterprise data.
Yeah.
And in the subset of that, the largest subset of spend data that's benefit of having been doing this, since 1996, having the data on the SAP business network, and what's beneficial about that is that that data is structured.
Mm-hmm.
It is, right? I mean, we've had a requisition with objects and fields, and so that data is structured. So you can be very, it's reliable in terms of what's out there because it is actual transactional data, which represents spend and money and some sort of financial truth, right? And that, I think gives us a significant advantage in terms of being able to trust the output and make sort of any recommendations and elevate insights to users. There's really three layers of data that are processed by the AI. So one, public internet data, it's an output to the public internet. You generate some sort of an input and it comes in, right? And that can be beneficial in many cases, specifically if there's desktop research that needs to be done for a category strategy or whatever, right? That's what people do anyways. They go Google it. So let's just make that a little easier and just get all that job done, right? Then there's sort of more insightful data, which is sort of, transactional data that exists based on the data set of our customers.
Yeah.
And the most specific one is the data that exists just for that one company, right? There's a bunch of rules from a security perspective that to make sure, and an anonymization perspective that need to take place to make that run effectively. But those second and third layers are pretty solid in terms of the quality of the data because they're structured, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're structured for the purposes of procurement in some way, shape, or form. So, I think there's no doubt that the quality of the data is going to ultimately determine the quality of the AI output, right? The more specific you get to a company, right? So if you go public internet, general spend data, company spend data, or the better the output will be, the more relevant it will be. There's no doubt. And we feel very lucky that, and we consider it a competitive advantage on our side, that we will have the best AI capability because we do have the world's largest and most structured data set from a business data perspective and a spend data perspective. And what's interesting even more about this is that, as remarkably powerful and amazing as the AI technologies themselves are, they're potentially becoming commoditized.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, open source is not too far behind the leading models that are out there. Right. So what will make things unique is the data. What will make the AI powerful is the data that it has been trained on. So again, it's, we'll see how the world evolves. This is obviously a very fast moving space and you have to be able to pivot and adjust quickly. But that's the way it's sort of that we're looking at it right now as we build these tools.
Could you talk a little bit about, how building, kind of next gen Ariba with AI as the core, with generative AI as kind of the core to the suite, how that could change from a module perspective? Like, how does that change the capability or perhaps the I was gonna say the outputs, but so I'm thinking about use cases. So that someone who's listening can say, okay, well, before spend analytics looked like this, tomorrow spend analytics can look like that. Same for sourcing, so that's really from a user perspective. Okay, I can see the benefit of why this is important.
I think so from a use case perspective, and it's a good question because I think initially when AI, hit the world by storm 2-3 years ago, everyone was kind of, we need to build, it's about the number of use cases you can build. And you had these big lists of, what if I click a button here and then sourcing event generates a commodity code? What if I click a button here? So And I think, while agents and agentic, it has become a bit of a buzzword, but I think what was good about that way of thinking and calling them agents or assistants, as we're calling them, is sort of, hey, let's not like dilute it down to like, I can click a button here and generate commodity codes. I can click a button here and generate description. And that's sure, you can do that, but that's talk holistically about a business process outcome. So I think what users can expect in our product, first of all, is that insights will be elevated. You can call it a dashboard. So as soon as you log in, it'll tell you, typically when you think of a dashboard, it's like, I go to a dashboard, I see my graphs, I see my to-do list, and those things are still there.
Yeah.
But they're not just going to be things that you've pre-programmed or things that are just in your approval flow, right? It will be, hey, I noticed that this commodity has just been tariffed.
Yeah.
This is an insight that's coming, right? And again, that's not a news alert, right? It's something that it says
it's been tariffed.
Tariffed. You have this, you buy this, right? You are impacted, right? Yeah. This is what I think you should do, right? You should, run a sourcing event. You should recontract. You should have multiple suppliers for this commodity in multiple locations, right? It'll actually be telling you to do that, right? Mm-hmm. And then, then at that point, there's a human decision to be made, right? Or a business decision to be made by a human, I should say, right? Which is, okay, interesting. No, at that point, you might sort of say, okay, now let me go talk to my leadership, et cetera. But at least you now know very clearly that this has happened, right? Now you come back and you say, okay, yes, that's fine. We do want to go ahead and modify our category strategy now, right? And it's telling you these are your 2 or 3 options. Modify your category strategy, right? And you can click it and say, modify category strategy, run sourcing event, and it will have all of that ready for you in execution mode.
Yeah.
Right. So again, it's not sort of saying, an elevated news alert. Now you go to category strategy and then you enter the commodity code and then you're like, generate. You're following through the business process. So the walk-up experience is AI by default, to give a bit of a flavor. And we have demos and stuff to show all the time. Customers are interested, but that's the way we're looking at it from a reimagined experience.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily about, and you can do this, you can use AI to tell you in your contract library that, these are some terms that you need to be worried about, or that these are things that are going to be triggered. And you can do it for that. You can do it for, as you say, like generate me a taxonomy or cleanse this data or whatever. But the real benefit is how it changes your entire approach to buying, essentially, because now you've got the scale of generative AI to be able to analyze data that you can't analyze on your own in real time, but also all the different inputs suggest like, okay, this is what you do. And this is something we've always seen in procurement is oftentimes we're so, we're kind of in this world of do more with less, and that's only getting harder and harder, and do more and do more and do more with less. So the easier that technology can make it to tell us kind of what to do, so we can just add the 10% on at the end, which is really the human in the loop element of it that understands the nuance. It helps you drive differentiated decisions, as opposed to helping you do like one individual task a little bit faster, which you can do, but that's not necessarily the big picture.
We're referring to it as sensing, reasoning, and acting. Right? And I think like that's sense, reason, and act. So it's evoke decision, right? So it senses something and it says, it reasons and it evokes a decision, right? So it sort of says, hey, you want to take a look at this, right? I think there's a decision to be made here because of what's happening, right? The actual execution bit is actually, that's the simpler part, right? That's like just to say, go run this sourcing event for this commodity, et cetera. That's actually something, but the sensing and the reasoning bit is actually the really powerful stuff that we think is going to unlock adoption of these tools mass, right? As compared to what exists today. The productivity that you talked about, I think I mentioned in your podcast before, we have been living through like 15 to 20 years of a productivity slump, right? And it's sort of, if you look at history, it's sort of one of the largest sort of slumps that exists, because typically technology should incrementally keep making things
more productive.
more productive. Like, I mean, it has done that since the printing press, right? And that's ultimately the goal of technology: make things a little bit easier, make things a little bit more productive. Except that it hasn't done so in the past 20 years, which is really interesting, right? That if you take a look at and you sort of think about how life has changed in the past 20 years, quite significant, right? I mean, the internet, mobile phones, cloud computing, all this great stuff that's enriched our lives. But maybe it's also distracted us, so that, maybe I'm multitasking too much and watching Netflix while I should also
scrolling social media too much.
Scrolling social media too much while I should be. So, we don't know that, but the real, the promise of AI, and again, we don't see it in the macroeconomic data yet, because the adoption in enterprise is low, right? Is that it should be giving us a significant productivity. Everyone talks about productivity. You have to see it in the numbers, right? And we think that, even definitely the way we've been doing our testing with the customers on the technology we're working with is that we are at a micro level measuring the productivity benefit, right? Like, how much time are you actually saving, right? As compared to a benchmark on getting a sourcing event created, on modifying a category strategy. How much time are you actually saving? So those, they're in the lab, so you have to take it with a pinch of salt, of course. But still, right, you're seeing significant benefits in terms of those sort of numbers. And we're hoping that this can hit scale, so that finally we are actually able to say that, okay, I can do a little bit more with less because of the technology, right? Obviously, look, trust is a huge factor. I'm sure, like, you have to be able to trust with the output, you have to be able to trust it. That's why having a human in the loop is critical. No doubt about that, right? But I think, and this is a very significant step in the right direction of at least getting the mundane work done and moving forward. I was listening to this technologist, I forget who it was, so I won't quote the name, but he said something really interesting. Like, AI should absolutely solve the blank page problem, right? So, it should absolutely solve the solve the first draft, right? And that'll save me a ton of time. And definitely, when you think about it from a sourcing event perspective, it should absolutely be solving. So the sense and reason, it should evoke, hey, there's a decision to be made here. Go look at this and see if you want to make this, and then I'm going to solve that blank page problem for you.
How do you think about future proofing? Because the pace of change is so fast, and because you can get to a point of time of launch, and all of a sudden there are new technologies, or technologies that have evolved even further, that you don't want to get yourself in a position where this was really innovative at the point of launch, but then quickly becomes overtaken even further by new advances. So how do you think about that kind of as you're building the platform?
It's a great question. I think, again, one of the benefits we have at SAP is that when we first built Ariba back a while, like 96 or whatever, I wasn't here, but I mean, I joined the company in 2006, and I've been very familiar with the platform and the way it works and how it is. It wasn't sort of like best in class platforms for technology existed, right? You had to, if you were building a product, you had to build your own platform with the product and make it work with app servers, and find how to host it, and generally was hosted on premise and all types of interesting stuff. I think the really interesting part is that best in class platforms for the purposes of technology platforms exist. And we're very lucky to have one of those ourselves in the SAP Business Technology Platform, BTP, which is what we have used to build next gen SAP, right? And it's what we build to use all of our innovations. So the benefit of that is that platform modernization work continues on that platform independently. SAP BTP is going to remain a modern enterprise platform. It's got a massive set of engineers that are maintaining it and making sure that it does remain a modern, best-in-class enterprise platform, independent of anything Ariba wants to do, right? So we have this remarkable benefit now where we can just leverage and take advantage of those platform enhancements as they keep becoming available. So that's the way that's why we took this decision now that, hey, because you're right. I mean, you could sort of say, hey, let's wait 4 years before we replatform the product. Right?
Yeah.
You know, let's see where this thing lands, right?
Yep.
You know, but no, we think we can have first mover advantage in the world of AI because we have sort of an entire force of super high quality, amazing engineers that are maintaining a business technology platform off of which we are then building.
Built as next gen SAP Ariba. Is that
So when we're designing, we're just thinking procurement, right? When I say we, I mean the SAP Ariba designers, the procurement, that dev team is just there thinking about but there's a remarkably powerful team that's just making sure that we have the latest cutting edge platform and that AI is front and center in terms of its capabilities and continues to remain so as the industry evolves in that space.
Yeah. So I want to kind of look forward to Rollout. You made the announcement last week. What are you looking at in terms of rollout of next gen SAP Ariba? And I say that both from there'll be a lot of people listening to the podcast today who are existing SAP Ariba clients. So kind of what it means for them. And also just generally for those that are looking in the market for, okay, what do I think about my procure tech stack in the future?
This was the most difficult sort of design decision on our side. And it wasn't actually the technology work that was hard. It was the fact that we are already the sort of leading procurement product that customers are using, right? So from a design principle perspective, we wanted this to make sure, if we were a startup that was saying we're going to build it, like it's an easy problem because you have you're starting with a clean slate, right? But we wanted to make sure that our customers are not disrupted. We do not want to disrupt them. So how do you make that happen, right? From a rollout perspective, this is going to be generally available in February 2026. If you are an existing customer of SAP Ariba or a module of SAP Ariba, you do not have to buy anything else. There's no commercial event that is required, right? That took a lot of work on our side, but it was the right decision and an important decision. So for example, if you have SAP Ariba buying, you will have access to next gen buying.
Yeah.
Right. If you have SAP Ariba sourcing, you will have access to next gen sourcing. Right. In some ways, it's kind of similar to when we rolled out guided buying. Mm-hmm. Had access to Ariba buying, you had access to guided buying, right? And you will be given a next gen instance. We will build transition tools that take, your configuration templates, your approval rules, your et cetera, right? And they port them to the next gen instance. We will also work with you during that process, right? To make sure that any support you need, SAP will be there and we'll make sure we support you as best as possible in the transition of those elements, right? When you're ready, and then obviously you'll be comfortable. When you're comfortable, right? You test out the next gen instance. Your classic instance is still running, and you're testing out the next gen instance. When you're comfortable, you'll be able to move to the next gen environment.
Hey, well, I know it's about time to wrap up, Baber, but interesting and exciting times, I think, in terms of how we kind of move, how we really start to deploy generative AI at scale, within the procure tech space. It's going to be fascinating, of course, to see how that rolls out. We'll be talking to you kind of through that journey because it's going to be really interesting to kind of see how that evolves to the time of launch and all the kind of decisions and that go into it and all the kind of impacts on a product by product basis. So excited to follow the journey along. But for today, Baber, congratulations on the launch, and we're kind of excited to follow the journey.
Thank you so much, Phil. We look forward to continuing talking with you. And I think you'll be talking to other people from SAP as well as we keep moving in this direction. We're very excited. We're confident that our customers are going to be very excited.
Yeah.
And we look forward to bringing these innovations to market.
Yeah. Well, one last question. If there's anywhere that people listening who are interested in this should go to find out a little bit more about next gen SAP Ariba, where should we direct them?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you already work with sort of an account representative from SAP, then please contact them. Absolutely, right. Let's get you a demo. Let's make sure you answer any and all questions that you have. You can, of course, all go to sap.com, go to the spend management section of sap.com and find more and more information about this as well. So those are the two resources that are sort of immediately available.
Perfect. We'll put a link to the website on our show notes for today's episode. That'll be at artofprocurement.com/podcast. One last time, Baber, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate it.